Revealed, the sinister mass of 3I Atlas 33 billion tons of terrifying, unexplainable horror. Clara couldn't shake the unease slithering through her veins. The cryptic messages had started as mere annoyances, but now they clung to her mind like shadows. Late shifts at the Fairview Heights diner did little to offer solace. Each night brought her face to face with clattering dishes and the laughter of patrons that felt worlds away from her own troubled life. Not everyone leaves the Atlas facility, one message read, the words stabbing at her sanity. What lingered beneath the suburb's friendly facade? It was hard to see the sky behind the weight of anxiety. A series of flickering lights in her home, a flash here, a darkness there, felt deliberate and sinister. Her neighbors, once warm and inviting, now wore smiles that chilled her to the bone. Mrs. Henderson had waved next door, but Clara couldn't ignore the way her eyes glimmered with something unshakably dark. Tiny tremors gripped her heart each time she parked the car in her dimly lit driveway, knowing she would return to an empty home filled with echoes. But what horrors lurked in the night? She'd confront the local police last week, only to be laughed off. "You're just tired, Clara. It's a quiet town," they had said, but each dismissive wave pushed her further into her well of isolation. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." The sharp chime of a clock sliced through the tension of her thoughts, yet nothing prepared Clara for what would come next. A blackout, abrupt and all-consuming, devoured Fairview Heights in a blanket of suffocating darkness. Fear raced up her spine and nestled in her throat as the shadows crept into her home. Evan and Lily, her world were gone. Panic gripped her, twisting her stomach like a vice. "Evan! Lily!" Her voice echoed, swallowed by the silence. She stumbled through the dark, heart pounding, each creak of the floorboards a taunt. The once familiar streets morphed into a maze of shadows. Flickering images danced between trees, teasing her with the idea of escape or perhaps the end. A boy's giggle cut through her frantic call, a beautiful sound now turned grotesque. "Evan?" she called out, inching toward the ominous silhouette of the Atlas facility looming at the outskirts of their suburb, its walls streaked with memories of what once was and what should never be. Was something lurking inside? The whispers echoed in her ears, blurring with the growls of an unseen presence, each sound demanding her attention. Her heart raced. The pressure of time felt insurmountable. What kind of darkness could have taken her children? Friends had become foes in a blink. Clara forced herself forward, each step heavier than the last. She shivered, drawing near to the facility. What unspeakable truths waited beyond those rusty gates? As she moved closer, the air thickened with a familiar sweetness laced with dread, a sound like her children mixed in with the insidious laughter echoing through the night. With every heartbeat, Clara's fear merged with a desperate hope. People she thought she knew had morphed beyond recognition. What could she uncover before it was too late? As dread seeped deeper, shadows stretched toward her, beckoning Clara closer to the monstrous secret buried beneath Fairview Heights, seeking what was lost, or claiming what was never meant to be. Would she dare to discover the truth, or would the darkness claim her too? The wind howled through the gaps in the crumbling structure as Clara pressed herself against the cold metal gate of the Atlas facility. Each creak sounded like whispers in the dark, hinting at secrets long buried. She could almost hear the taunting laughter of her children echoing through the shadows, a stark reminder of what was at stake. With trembling hands, she pulled out her phone, the screen flickering to life, a dim beacon that offered little comfort. "No signal," she muttered under her breath, frustration bubbling inside her. Panic started to creep back as the uneasy silence enveloped her again. With every passing second, the shadows seemed to close in tighter, as if the building itself were alive and hungry. She took a step forward, the gate groaning in protest, before forcing it open. The smell hit her first, metallic and sweet, a rotting stench that clawed at her throat. How could something so terrible exist just across the street from her home? Every instinct screamed for her to turn back, but the need to find her children overpowered her fear. Inside, fluorescent lights flickered sporadically, casting restless shadows. Clara's heart raced as she stepped into the corridor, the sound of her footsteps swallowed by an unsettling silence. She glanced around, her eyes scanning for any sign, any trace of Evan and Lily. A series of locked doors lined the hallway, their rigid steel fronts added to the claustrophobia creeping into her mind. It felt wrong to be here. The hairs on her neck stood on end, prickling with an ominous warning. Then she heard a soft whimper, barely audible, but unmistakably attached to a child's voice. Clara's blood ran cold. She pressed against the nearest door, fingers trembling as she tried the handle. Locked. Desperation clawed at her. Evan! Lily! She called, her voice echoing, mingling with the distant hum of machinery. She kicked at the door, but it wouldn't budge. Around her, an eerie whisper washed over the walls. "They'll come for you." It was so faint, yet felt as though it wrapped around her, squeezing. Clara turned, her breath hitching as she glanced back toward the dim light of the entrance, the sanctuary from the shadows. Her instincts screamed for her to run, but she knew she couldn't. "I will find you," she shouted, rallying her fading courage. She moved deeper into the facility, drawn toward the source of the whimpering. Each door passed felt like a lifetime, and each flicker of the lights wavered like her resolve. At the end of the hall, the last door stood ajar, a thin sliver of light spilling into the darkness. Clara pressed her ear against it. The whimpering was louder now, more urgent. "Evan? Lily?" She pushed the door open slowly, the rusted hinges screeching in protest. Inside, it was stark, clinical, an examination room. A faint light flickered from a console, revealing strange machines that hummed with the rhythm of something unnatural. In the center of the room lay a small figure, illuminated by the harsh glow of light. It wasn't Evan or Lily. It was a child she didn't recognize, eyes wide with terror, mouth agape in a silent scream. Clara felt her heart drop. What had happened to her children? A sudden sound from behind made her spin around, her pulse pounding in her ears. A shadow loomed, large and terrifying. "Did you come to find them?" it rasped, a voice both metallic and mocking. Not everyone leaves the Atlas facility with a gasp. Clara's breath hitched as an overwhelming realization sank in. Whatever this place was, it thrived on fear, on innocence shattered. And now, it yearned for her too. "Run," the child whispered, their eyes filled with unspeakable knowledge. But would running even matter anymore? With darkness closing in, Clara was left with one final question. Would she confront the horror head-on, or would it consume her whole, just like it had done to the countless others lost inside? Her choice loomed, heavier than ever, as she stood at the crossroads of light and darkness, each path fraught with the weight of her decision. Clara's heart thudded painfully in her chest as the figure stepped forward. Its features remained obscured in the dim light, yet an aura of malevolence clung to it like smoke. The metallic rasping voice echoed in her mind, mingling with her frantic thoughts about Evan and Lily. The darkness around her felt alive, pulsing with an energy that stoked her fear to a fever pitch. "What did you do to them?" she demanded, driven by a fierce protectiveness that burned through her dread. The shadow laughed, a chilling sound that twisted her stomach. "They're safe for now, but time is a fickle friend. Their innocence, however, is a luxury that others cannot afford." It gestured toward the small child on the table, whose wide eyes now darted back and forth, as if witnessing a horror that Clara couldn't yet see. "What do you mean?" Clara's voice trembled, caught between anger and desperation. She took a step back, instinctively moved toward the door, but she couldn't leave the child to whatever fate awaited them both. "Time is running out." The figure advanced, the fluorescent lights flickered dangerously as if signaling its approach. "You must choose sacrifice or be sacrificed. Only then can you find your children." Clara's mind raced. What sacrifice? The thumping in her chest drowned out the child's whimpering. She felt the air grow heavier, suffocating, thick with dread. "What are you?" It paused, a smile curling beneath the cloak of shadows. I am merely a caretaker of truths you refuse to understand. This place it feeds on dread consumes fear. You won't leave without giving it what it craves. As it moved closer, Clara felt a coldness wrap around her, drawing her in. The machines behind her hummed more loudly, blaring warnings that echoed painfully in her ears. She turned to see the child's face contorted in silent agony. Please help us. The child's eyes glistened with unshed tears, pleading for a savior that seemed just out of reach. Clara felt an unexpected surge of determination. She wouldn't let fear paralyze her. She lunged towards the console behind the child, hands trembling over the buttons. Perhaps something here could help. I'll find a way to save you both. But the shadow grinned wider, dark eyes like abyssal pits filled with perverse delight. Hope is a cruel joke in this domain. With a swift movement, it raised a hand, and the lights began to strobe violently, casting shadows that danced like demons across the sterile room. The child on the table gasped louder, now thrashing against the bindings that Clara hadn't noticed until now. No! Let them go! Clara screamed, adrenaline coursing through her as she frantically pressed buttons, fighting against the wave of despair that threatened to drown her. The room shifted, machines thrumming with energy, and suddenly the floor trembled beneath her feet. Metal walls shuddered as reality itself warped. Cries emerged from unseen corners of the facility, echoing like lost souls trapped in torment. The shadowed figure's laughter melded with the chaos. You want to save them? There is no escape without sacrifice. Decide now, Clara. Time is your enemy. Clara's breath quickened as the walls began to close in, pulsating with angry energy. Could she sacrifice something, anything, to take back her children? The child's fear-stricken gaze pinned her down, holding the weight of her choice. Then one thought crystallized through the madness. Evan and Lily, I'm coming! She shouted, refusing to bend to despair even as the darkness clamored closer. With one final press of a button, she screamed, release. What would happen next? Clara's body trembled, and the room plunged into a blinding luminosity, dimensions splintering as if under pressure. Would she find the strength to confront the horror that lurked in the atlas beyond her sight? The choice she made sent ripples through the facility, and she felt as if her very soul was being weighed. But the question lingered, was the sacrifice already too great? And had she just awakened something far worse? The blinding light consumed Clara, wrapping her in a cocoon of luminescence that pulsed like a heartbeat. She shielded her eyes, bracing for impact, but when it subsided she found herself standing in another room, a dimly lit corridor lined with metallic doors, each one stamped with a warning label, Danger Experimental Subjects. Her pulse raced, a cold sweat beading on her forehead. Clara's breath came in short gasps as she looked around, the disorienting shift leaving her momentarily breathless. The screams had quieted, but a deeper, more insidious hum throbbed beneath the walls, vibrating through her bones. Something was here, lurking just beyond her sight. Evan! Lily! She yelled, her voice echoing in the emptiness. Panic gripped her as she took a step forward. Every instinct urged her to flee, yet she felt anchored to the floor, unwilling to abandon the last vestige of hope. As she moved deeper into the corridor, the air turned acrid, thick with a metallic tang that clawed at her throat. Shadows flitted at the edges of her vision. Every flicker made her heart race faster. She stopped before a door that shuddered slightly, faint whimpering emanating from within. Please help us. The voice was familiar, laced with uncertainty. It cut through Clara like a knife. It couldn't be Lily? She whispered, too terrified to hope. The whimper became more pronounced, mingled with soft sobs. Clara reached for the handle, but a chill seized her hand, paralyzing her. The metal felt alive, hot and seething beneath her palm. Do you really want to open that door? The shadowed figure's voice echoed in her mind, filled with laughter that danced between malicious and knowing. I have to. Clara pulled harder, desperation surging through her. They're my children! Suddenly, the wall opposite her rippled. Clear images flickered, memories, perhaps. Evan and Lily jumping in puddles, their laughter ringing like wind chimes, innocent and untouched. But that joy was soon tinged with crimson shadows, the moment twisting into dark whispers that manifested deeper fears. They were trapped. The door rattled violently in its frame as the cries intensified. Clara, breathless, pushed against it, but it wouldn't budge. The invisible barrier holding it closed felt impenetrable. A figure emerged from the shadows at the end of the corridor, a silhouette of untold malevolence, its relentless presence pressing on her like a vice. You didn't think their innocence would come without a cost, did you? No! Clara screamed, though her voice wavered. The spectre seemed to draw strength from her fear, as if her dread was a feast. This isn't right. I won't let you trap them. As if responding to her defiance, the spectre lunged forward. It was physical. It slid through the air like smoke, whispering promises too dark to comprehend. Clara staggered back, heart pounding in her chest as an understanding washed over her. This was more than just a choice. It was a battle for their very souls. Then she realized the console. The button she had pressed must have triggered something. She had to return to it, to wield whatever power the control panel held. Perhaps it could unlock the door, or at least provide some revelation. Clara! The cry resonated from behind the door, pulling her back. Mom! The urgency constricted her chest. Could she risk confronting whatever lay outside? The shadows surrounding her twisted, promising torment, revealing abyssal depths that threatened to engulf everything she cared about. But could she abandon them now? Her choice hung in the air, pregnant with tension, as the other figure stalked closer, its laughter like nails on a chalkboard. The corridor pulsed with anticipation, a malignant presence tightening around her throat. Would she fight or succumb to despair? In the distance, a faint whistle echoed another child's voice, lost in the shadows. It grew louder, a melody tinged with terror. Suddenly Clara knew, the sacrifice wasn't just about her. Was she ready to pay the ultimate price to save her children? The door creaked ominously once more as the child's cries intensified, a frantic plea puncturing through the darkness, and Clara felt the shadows closing in fast. Choose, Clara! The spectre's voice boomed, echoing in the walls, mingling with the sounds of her children's screams. With courage igniting her thoughts, Clara turned to face the encroaching darkness. But what awaited her on the other side of that door? Was it salvation or the deepest pit of their nightmares? That question danced at the edge of her mind as she took a deep breath, resolved to confront whatever horror lurked just out of sight. Would this be her final act of defiance, or had she stepped into a game where the rules changed with each heartbeat? Clara's heart thundered like a war drum in her chest. The screams of her children yanked at her insides, raw and pleading. She took a shaky breath, steeling herself against the encroaching darkness. If this was a game, she would change the rules. She bolted back down the corridor, her footsteps echoing ominously, the shadows hissing at her retreat. Each metallic door seemed to mock her, their warnings blaring like alarms in her mind. Danger. Experimental subjects. She was racing against time, against the malevolence that coiled in the corners. The control panel flickered dimly under the low light. It beckoned her like a lighthouse to a lost ship. Clara lunged for it, fingers trembling as she brushed over the buttons, trying to remember the sequence she had pressed before, anything that could help her access the nightmare behind the door. Come on! She whispered with a voice barely audible, panic bubbling beneath the surface. The console lit up, a sterile glow illuminating her frantic face. Symbols blinked and danced away, taunting her. Desperate, she jabbed at the red button that caught her eye, a quiet hum vibrating through the metal beneath her fingertips. Behind her, the wall pulsed, as if something was awakening. She turned, catching a glimpse of the spectre rushing toward her, its shape shifting into grotesque forms of her worst fears, twisted faces that grinned in glee. Foolish woman! It hissed, the laughter echoing off the walls. You think you can control what you cannot comprehend? Clara didn't respond, her fingers moving faster, the panic clawing at her throat, tightening its grip like a noose. She pressed another button, and the console whirred, emitting a low growl. She felt it deep in her bones. The whispers of the doors all around her crescendoed into a cacophony of hatred. No! The spectre was upon her now, a cold draft swirling around her, carrying the scent of decay. It reached out with gnarled fingers, grazing her cheek a moment's touch that froze her in place, shivering with horror. The whimpering behind the door intensified, piercing through her fear like a siren's call. "Mom!" Those little voices were a tangible thread pulling her back toward that door. "Let them go!" Clara cried, facing the spectre, heart racing in defiance. She could hear the pulse of the corridor responding to her anger, the shadows flickering to life. "You won, win!" Suddenly, she felt the air crackle, electricity surged around her. The console lit up fiercely, and a new door appeared at the far end of the corridor, gleaming and inviting. Somehow, it felt alive and full of potential. "What is this?" The spectre faltered, hesitating for the first time. "You think that door will save you?" Clara didn't answer. Breathing deeply, she flung herself towards the newly revealed door. The weight of the spectre's malicious intent bore down on her as she sprinted, skin prickling with dread. She heard it roar behind her, trying to pull her back into its sinister embrace. "Mom!" The call was stronger now, filled with urgency. Clara turned briefly, catching a sadly familiar light in the fractured shadows, the soft glow of her children's faces emerging from the dark, reaching for her. As she reached for the handle of the new door, she hesitated. What would be on the other side? A chance at freedom, or an extension of the nightmare? Clara swallowed hard. She could sense the spectre looming closer, its laughter echoing through the corridor, dark and hollow. With a final breath, she yanked the door open, the hinges screeching like a banshee. A blinding light engulfed her as she stepped through, feeling the cold hand of despair tugging at her very soul. What awaited her in this new space? The cries of her children faded, replaced by a low, monstrous growl. She hesitated on the threshold, heart racing. Had she walked into salvation or the mouth of hell? The pulse of the unknown surged through her as the door slammed shut behind her, sealing her fate. And then, a whisper. "Welcome to the game, Clara." The air thickened with malevolence, and Clara's resolve wavered. How far must she go to save them? What was waiting in the darkness beyond? The blinding light faded, replaced by a thick darkness that wrapped around Clara like a suffocating blanket. Shadows slithered along the walls, forming shapes that seemed alive, taunting her with their ever-shifting forms. The air tasted of rust and despair, clinging to her tongue. "Mom?" A distant voice echoed, a whisper thick with fear. It came from somewhere deep in the darkness, driving her to push through her paralyzing dread. "Where are you?" Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, but the desperate plea of her children pulled her forward. She stepped cautiously, feeling her way along the slick, cold wall, her fingers tracing crude, wet markings that seemed to pulse beneath her touch. She shuddered involuntarily. What had she stepped into? Clara could feel the thick air vibrating with unspoken terror. Each step felt like a betrayal of her sanity, yet her heart urged her on. She focused on the voice, her resolve hardening. "I'm coming," she called, though it sounded more like an unsteady promise than an assurance. The growl returned, louder now, closer. It swelled and rolled like thunder, a guttural menace that vibrated through the cold floor underneath her bare feet. Time felt distorted here. Every heartbeat echoed in her ears, every breath a reminder of her vulnerability. "Mom!" This time the voice was desperate, filled with a dread that made Clara's blood run cold. She pressed on, scrambling through the darkness until a glimmer caught her eye. A narrow strip of light spilled out from beneath another door, the edges trembling as if alive. Frantically, she rushed toward it, the cold grip of fear tightening around her throat. Each loud thud of her heart matched the devilish growl echoing nearby. Clara hesitated, remembering the whisper, the promise that the game had just begun. What lay behind this new door? Another trap designed to ensnare her? As she pressed her ear to the cold metal, she could hear something horrific, sounds of scraping, like nails clawing against the ground. She couldn't wait. Not for another second. She shoved the door open, blind hope blaring like a siren in her heart. The room beyond was a nightmare of stark white fluorescent light. It hurt her eyes, but what chilled her deeper was the sight that greeted her. Her children were there, suspended in large glass tubes, their small faces pale and frightened. Clara's breath hitched as she rushed toward them. "Mom!" they cried, their voices muffled by the glass, faces pressed against it, eyes wide with terror. She slammed her palms against the cool surface, feeling their warmth, their desperation, and then she saw it. The twisted figure in the corner, a grotesque being lurched forward. It was massive wrong, a fusion of human and machine, with metallic limbs and eyes that glowed with malicious intent. It grinned, sharp teeth glistening in the sickly light. "Ready for your next move, Clara?" it taunted, voice smooth and dripping with mockery. Clara's heart raced, thrumming in her ears. "Let them go!" she shouted, feeling the web of terror tightening around her, each second stretching painfully. "We can play forever," the creature crooned, stepping closer, its eyes narrowing with delight. "You'll have to make a choice. Save them or save yourself?" The room vibrated as Clara's mind raced. There had to be a way. She couldn't let this twisted game consume them all. She turned back to her children, their faces now blurred in her sight, a haunting reminder of what she stood to lose. The tension felt palpable, heavy like a descending fog, thickening her desperation. "Mom!" their pleas echoed, anchored in her mind, lacing through her heart. But what was she willing to sacrifice? Clara clenched her fists, determination bubbling beneath the surface. She knew she had to act fast before the darkness closed in. But deep down, she could feel the creeping doubt. Would she even make it in time? And then she remembered the ominous last words, "Welcome to the game." With a surge of adrenaline, she turned back to face the creature. "I choose them." As the words left her lips, the room erupted into chaos. The lights flickered violently, shadows slashing across the walls as the creature lunged. In that moment, everything felt suspended in the air, the dark promise of what lurked ahead threatening to swallow them all whole. What would become of her choice? Would time bend to her will, or would she be trapped in this nightmare forever? The uncertainty hung heavy as Clara fought to grasp the fading light of hope. The creature lunged, a blur of jagged metal and raw menace. Clara barely had a moment to process her choices, her heart racing as the air buzzed with danger. Her instincts screamed for her to run, to pull her children from their terrifying glass prisons, but fear rooted her to the spot. The lights flickered again, and in the flashes, she saw its grotesque face twisted into a horrific smile. "Choose wisely," it taunted, each word a blade slicing through the tension. "Get back!" she shouted at the creature, as much a command to herself as it was to the menacing being. Her voice cracked, but she forced it steady, refusing to let it see her breaking point. In that instant, the chamber trembled as if it were alive. The glass tubes shuddered, and Clara caught the glint of fear in her children's eyes, their faces a mixture of hope and desperation. "Mom, help us!" The haunting echo of their cries pierced the chaos around her, urging her forward into action. But the creature was faster, springing through the air as if mocking her. It lunged, metallic limbs extending like spider legs, jagged edges glimmering under the harsh lights. Clara sidestepped just in time, the monster's arm brushing against her, leaving behind a burning sensation, like the chill of death itself trying to claim her. Where was the release? This wasn't a game anymore. It was a grotesque slaughterhouse. Clara clenched her fists tighter. "Let them out!" she screamed, determination surging within her. The tubes held her children. How could she choose anything but them? "I'll take their place!" she yelled, ignoring the panic that gnawed at her insides. The creature paused, its grin widening impossibly, as if to savor her words. "Such a noble sacrifice," it leered. "But sacrifices come with a price." Before she could react, it raised a hand, fingers curling. The tubes began to hum ominously, the glass darkening as if a storm brewed inside. Clara's heart raced. What price was it after? "No!" she shouted, rushing forward with an urgency fueled by desperation. "You can't! Just let them go!" And then she felt that a wave of cold seeped into her bones. The shadows danced wildly across the room, pulling her attention in every direction. Clara had no clue what the creature planned. She needed a way out. The tubes flickered, releasing a soft glow. For a fleeting moment, Clara caught a glimpse of her children's faces, terrified and pale, eyes huge with anguish. She pressed her palms against the glass, feeling the pulse of their hearts, knowing they were fighting to stay alive, even in their restraints. "Mom!" they cried again, and she could see tiny hands reaching out. The creature laughed, a sound hollow and echoing, chilling her deeper than the darkness itself. "Time is running out, Clara. Their souls are yours to save if you sacrifice yours first." She was losing them. Panic surged through her body. She had to act. She dashed toward the control panel near the tubes, her hands trembling but ignited with resolve. She pushed buttons at random, eyes darting between her children and the creature, whose eyes flickered with malicious delight. Each incorrect press sent electric shocks through her body, but she didn't dare stop. "Help me!" she screamed out to the children, who were still desperately trying to breach the unyielding glass. "Mom!" They were fading, she could feel it. A distant part of her mind tangled with a strand of hope, urging her to think, to remember their family bond and the lengths a mother would go to protect her young. Then she saw it. A red button ominous against the chilling backdrop. A final gamble. Would it seal their fate or set them free? Without pausing to question further, Clara slammed her palm against it. The room erupted in a cacophony of alarms, a shriek of metal tearing through her heart like ice. The glass tube shattered in a brilliant flash of light, sending shards flying. She barely had time to shield her eyes when her children rushed into her arms. But the creature howled a dreadful sound like the wail of a banshee. For a moment, Clara felt victorious, holding her children close, their warmth battling the icy grip of dread still lingering in the air. But then it exploded from the shadows, undeterred, looming larger than before. "You think you've won?" It spat, rage radiating from its monstrous form. Clara's blood ran cold as she felt the environment shift once more, like the floor had dropped out beneath her. It wasn't over yet. She looked at her children, eyes wide, breath shallow. The urgency surged again, this time mixed with the dread of what was yet to come. Could they evade the horror, or was the true game just beginning? Turning back to face the creature, Clara realized one grim truth. The monster was not finished with them. And neither was the game. The creature's laughter filled the chamber, a sound so chilling it made the air thicken. Clara's heart hammered wildly in her chest as she clutched her children tighter. They were free, but at what cost? The creature loomed over them, the shadows twisting around its form as if they were alive, eager to consume. "Did you really think it would be that simple?" It hissed, its voice a low growl dripping with malice. It stepped closer, metal limbs moving fluidly, as though they were one with the darkness itself. "Each game must have a victor, and I do not intend to lose." Clara swallowed hard, panic clawing at her insides. "What do you want?" she demanded, her voice wavering despite her efforts to sound brave. She would not let her children see her fear, not when they had just escaped one prison only to be cornered again. The creature tilted its head, a grotesque semblance of curiosity. "Your choice has already been made, foolish mother. But let me show you the stakes." With a flick of its wrist, the walls of the chamber shimmered. Images flickered to life, swirling with shadows and despair. Clara gasped as she saw a twisted reflection of their lives. Her children still trapped, glass keeping them alive, faces twisted in anguish, while she fought against the creature's will. The images danced like mocking spirits, showing her destinies entwined with the monster. "Your world is so fragile," the creature breathed. "With a flick, I can turn it into chaos. You're already entangled in my web. And soon you shall see that the lives you fought for are mere threads. One cut, and everything you love," its metal fingers flexed, "will wither." Terror flooded her veins, but beneath it, a spark ignited. "You're wrong," she spat out, determination flickering in her chest. "I'll fight you. I'm not afraid." The creature smirked, the shadows around it writhing in delight. "But you should be. Your attempts to resist will only make my victory sweeter." It advanced again, metal scraping the ground like claws raking flesh. Clara turned, clutching her children's hands tightly, wanting to shield them from the horrifying sight. Youthful innocence clashed violently with the darkness threatening to envelop them. "Stick close," she hissed, moving toward the chamber's edge. They needed to find an escape route. As they rushed forward, the dim lights began to flicker violently, casting erratic shadows that twisted and shifted, distorting their path. Suddenly, the air crackled. A sharp bolt of energy surged through Clara, lightning pain radiating through her. She fell to her knees, her grip on her children flickering. A magnetic force seemed to tear her away from them, and Clara's heart plummeted as their hands slipped from hers. "No!" Her scream echoed through the chaos, but the creature was ready, its laughter reverberating like nails on a chalkboard. The limbs of shadows lashed out, snaring her children, pulling them away. Clara struggled to her feet, panic surging through her like wildfire. "Let them go! I'll do anything!" The creature paused, a glint of interest sparking in its luminous eyes. "Anything?" it echoed, mocking her desperation. "Yes. Just tell me how." Feverish hope coursed through her. If only the monster would divulge its secret. The creature leaned closer, a long, cold whisper slipping through its jagged teeth. "Then the game begins anew, Clara. You may choose to save them, but I warn you the cost will be greater than you can imagine." Panic and dread seized her, but time was running out. Clara glared into the creature's eyes, a mixture of fear and rage burning deep. "What do you mean?" It grinned, a wide, vile split of metal and shadow. "Oh, you'll see, dear mother. The game is just about to unfold." Clara's breath caught in her throat. The creature's claws were poised above her children, shadows swirling eagerly at its command. The air thickened with despair. Would she be forced to wager more than she could bear to save her family? The creature's grin broadened as Clara felt the first squeeze of desperation enveloping her heart like a vice she was tethered to. This nightmare game, and there was no escape without more sacrifices. As the ground trembled beneath her feet, a chilling realization washed over her. She was already part of the game, and the rules had yet to be revealed. What was it going to demand from her next? And would she have the strength to pay the price? Clara's mind raced, the creature's laughter echoing like thunder in her skull. Her children were writhing against the monster's grasp, tears streaming down their faces, their screams clawing through the cacophony of despair. The shadows coiled tighter, suffocating the hope she had clung to. "Let them go!" she screamed, a primal shout that reverberated in the chamber, an empty battle cry against the encroaching darkness. In her mind, the images of their lives played out, bright and vivid, reminding her what was at stake. But the creature merely chuckled, its eyes glinting with a cruel delight, as if the suffering of her children was the punchline to a twisted joke. "You underestimate the power I wield, Clara. You want to save them? Then step closer to the abyss and let me show you true despair." Every muscle in Clara's body screamed to run, yet she felt herself being pulled toward the creature. The shadows beckoned, swirling around her legs, as if alive, a siren call that promised an end to the chaos but whispered of greater horrors. Taking a deep breath, she forced herself to hold on to the fleeting sense of hope. "I will do whatever it takes," she vowed, her voice shuddering but firm. "Just tell me what you want." "Such spirit!" the creature hissed, drawing nearer, its metal limbs glimmering ominously in the flickering light. How invigorating to see a mother's love blossom into such fierce determination. But we both know it's too little, too late. As it spoke, the chamber trembled and the shadows darkened, morphing into a swirling maelstrom of torment and chaos, images of loss and failure spilling from the walls. Clara saw her children trapped eternally in glass, their bodies slowly fading, shadows of the vibrant life they once held. They called out to her, their voices mingling in a haunting symphony of longing and despair. "No!" she gasped, clutching her throat as Bao threatened to rise. Each breath became a struggle against the tidal wave of despair. "Ah, hear their cries, feel their anguish!" The creature's voice rose, growing ecstatic. "But what could be more enticing than a chance to snatch them back from the brink? You may choose, Clara. Sacrifice one to save the other, or perhaps sacrifice yourself for their freedom." Clara staggered back, stunned, a dull ache of betrayal pulsing in her chest. "You're a monster. That's not a choice." "Perception is subjective," it replied, twisting its head grotesquely, its eyes narrowing with predatory delight. "What you see as monstrous, I see as mere survival. Choices define our essence, and your choices will lay bare your true self." There it was, the cruel game she had already become a part of. The gravity of the situation crashed down upon her, suffocating her under its weight. Her fear morphed into something darker, digging beneath her skin as the shadows tightened around her children's fragile forms. She felt cold sweat bead at her temples, and the depths of desperation spun a web of doubt around her, a question drumming in her mind. What if there was no way out? What if the creature was right? "Make your decision," the creature whispered, its smile sharp enough to pierce. Clara's heart raced. She could feel the darkness pressing ever closer, a blanket of despair. Every beat echoed the urgency of her choice, a choice that would dictate the very fabric of their existence. The moment stretched impossibly, suffocatingly, until she finally found her voice again, steadier now. Is that truly my only option?" "Indeed," it purred, its voice a silken thread woven with malice. "The clock is ticking, Clara. Decide who lives and who dies." The tremble in her hands dissolved into fierce conviction, thoughts racing as she pictured her children's faces, bright with laughter. "Then I will choose to fight," she declared, a surge of strength igniting within her. "I will not sacrifice anyone." The creature's laughter rang out, wild and unrestrained. "Foolish choice. There are always consequences, dear Clara. The game is only just beginning." As its laughter faded, the shadows surged forward, reaching for her. It was. Then Clara realized that the game had only just spiraled into darker depths. Would she survive the choices ahead, or would the true horror of her defiance reveal a fate worse than death? The chamber quaked violently, shadows swirling into illusions of despair, threatening to unravel everything she held dear. Clara clutched her children to her chest, knowing the true nightmare was yet to unfold, and the stakes would rise higher than she ever imagined. Would she summon the strength to confront what lurked within? And how much more would she have to lose? Clara's heart thundered in her chest as darkness coiled around her, the creature's laughter echoing in her mind. She stared down the abyss, determination mingling with despair. How much more could she take? She would not let fear dictate her choices anymore. The monstrous figure loomed, its presence shifting like smoke, a blend of horror and malice. "You think you can resist?" it taunted, the shadows reaching for her children, tightening like a noose. Clara turned her gaze to Evan and Lily. Their faces, pale and frightened, sparked a fire deep within her. They needed her strength now more than ever. "Mom! Help us!" they cried, voices trembling with urgency. Each word clawed at her heart, raw and desperate. She could feel the darkness pressing in, but with each scream, something inside her surged brighter, a flame flickering defiantly against the night. "I refuse to play your twisted game," Clara shouted, her voice steadying around the chaos. The shadow recoiled, momentarily daunted by her fierce resolve. "What did you say? You dare defy me?" it hissed, seething with contempt. But Clara saw her opening. "I won't sacrifice anyone to you. I will find another way." With resolve hardening in her heart, she turned to the control panel once more. Hope surged as she scanned for a solution, her fingers dancing across the buttons with renewed purpose. Suddenly, an idea struck her, an insight that flickered like a spark. "If you thrive on fear, let me show you what true love can do." The creature paused, curiosity flickering in its glowing eyes. "What are you suggesting?" "I'll harness my love for my children," Clara said, her voice gaining momentum. "You think fear consumes power, but nothing matches the strength of a mother's love." With determination, she threw her entire will into the console. As her heart surged with the depths of her spirit, the room transformed. Brilliant light erupted, expanding outward brighter than anything she had ever experienced. It pushed against the shadows, retreating as if scalded. "No!" the creature screamed, its voice laced with panic. The room warped, sounds crashing like waves against a rock. It was as if Clara's love unleashed the very essence of life itself, countering despair with a radiant force. "Mom!" Evan and Lily shouted again, their voices a luminous anchor to her resolve. She felt the warmth of their connection washing over her, indomitable, unbreakable. "Stay close to me," she urged, pulling them into her embrace as the light enveloped them, breaking the creature's hold. In that warmth, Clara felt the truth bloom of recognition that together, they were more powerful than fear. The monster thrashed within the light, contorting as if it were being torn apart. Clara stepped forward, unwavering. "You have no power here," she declared, emboldened by the brilliance surrounding them. With a final push, Clara reached for the door that had appeared in the radiant light. "This is our escape," she cried, her children as small hands grasped tightly in her own. As they surged forward, the creature as screams morphed into howls, primal and furious. The shadows around it dissipated, banished by the overwhelming force of Clara's love and energy greater than any horror it had ever wielded. The door swung open, revealing the familiar warmth of home. Clara's breath hitched as they burst through into the soft embrace of daylight spilling across Fairview Heights. They were free! The weight of the darkness lifted, replaced by the bright hues of their neighborhood, the laughter and cheer that once felt so distant. Clara turned back to see the creature flailing within the remnants of its own darkness as it vanished into nothingness, quieted by the force of her love. "I thought we lost you," Evan gasped, eyes wide with relief and joy. Clara knelt, wrapping her arms around both of her children, laughter spilling from her lips, mingling with tears of joy. "You will never lose me. I promise," she whispered, heart swelling. As the sun set, casting a golden hue over Fairview Heights, Clara held Evan and Lily close, thankful to have emerged from the shadow of despair. They looked out at their community, the faces of neighbors now warm, welcoming, a stark contrast to the chilling memories that had threatened to consume them. "This darkness is a part of our past," Clara said softly, her voice stronger. "But it will not define us. We choose love, always." And as they stood together, Clara knew this wasn't just the end, but a beginning, one where hope flourished, nourished by the profound bond they shared. Nothing could take that away. So, if you loved this journey, you need to subscribe now. Don't miss out on the next exclusive stories waiting just for you. Smash that like button now to help spread the word. Your support fuels the stories that keep coming. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about Clara's adventure. Let's hear your insights. This is the moment to show your support, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Together, let us keep expanding this family of story lovers.